new styles appear, and in many cases you can date a picture on a tomb wall by the fashions of the moment.
It was not a misfortune to be born a girl in ancient Egypt. Nobody'd even heard of the veil. Why this huge difference between Egypt and other places? Ancient Egypt lived along a river in a desert so wide that early armies couldn't cross it. To the north was open sea. So for almost 2,000 years, ancient Egypt was safe from attack by other civilized states. But Egypt's luck eventually ran out. Around 1600 BC, the first invaders arrived. It was the end of Egypt as the great exception. First came the Hyksos, and then came the Hittites, an even more aggressive lot. And in the course of organizing itself to fight them off, Egypt became like everywhere else. This temple was built over 3,000 years ago by Ramses III, one of the first pharaohs to glory in being a conqueror and a killer. There's the great pharaoh in his war chariot, pulled by horses that look like New Kingdom Harley-Davidsons, trampling the foe underfoot. There's the pharaoh, 10 times larger than life, holding a bunch of doomed captives by the hair. And there are the pharaoh's scribes, counting the severed hands and various other severed bits of his slaughtered enemies. This was when Egypt finally accepted the full patriarchal package. Once other civilizations can reach out and hurt you, you have to militarize. That's what happened in 19th dynasty Egypt, and it had an immediate impact on women.
With the accession of the 19th dynasty, which was a military dynasty under Ramses I, you have the beginning of a new approach, a new presentation of the kingship. They saw themselves as reforming the increasingly effeminate and ineffectual ways of the latter part of the 18th dynasty. We're not like those guys who misruled you before. We are men, we are warriors, we are the new conquering kings of the empire. And they represented their sons in a way that the earlier kings had not. The representations of the royal princes in the 18th dynasty, even the ones who ultimately become king, are very rare indeed. Under the 19th dynasty, you have the boys, rows of them. Ramses II brags of having had 108 sons, and those presumably were only the legitimate ones. The picture in the 19th dynasty is one of increasingly masculine presentation.
Nice guys finished last. The Chinese, the Incas, Mesopotamians, Mayans, Aztecs, even Egyptians, they all went the same way in the end. First a reasonably pleasant and tolerant culture, and then smash. Along comes the local version of the patriarchal revolution, and it's tyranny, slaughter, and oppression forevermore. Which still leaves one big question, maybe the most important one. Why was it necessary in every patriarchal culture to destroy the status of women? How many babies would the average woman have if nobody was pushing her around? It would certainly not be the 6 children that were the norm in our grandmother's generation. In cultures that let women make their own choices, small families are the norm, because women know that children are a lot of work. Big families are a legacy of militarized societies. Military power requires lots of people, especially soldiers. That means lots of babies, especially boys. But you can't get a high birth rate if women are really free to choose. So you have to reduce them to a state where their best hope of security and respect is their children. Or more precisely, their boy children.
Patrilineality, The passing down of possessions and property and name from father to son means that you must have a son. If you're so unlucky as not to have a boy, this is big trouble. One recourse is to try to attain a boy by, for example, giving your inheritance to a nephew. That obliges him to take care of you and respect you. Women who don't produce sons wind up being destitute for that very reason. You can't afford to alienate your brothers or uncles or any male kin. The source of weakness for women is the fact that they are replaceable, that a man can take another woman instead of his wife. It's not that their functions are replaceable, it's the fact that they are, personally, that there are so many other women to choose from.
بس عايزة تتنشف إذا كتوري نشفة.
Women try to overcome this oppression by practicing maximum freedom within the space that is allowed to them. They just know the boundaries, they know where not to go, and within that, they have maximum power. ودي اللي كنست ودي اللي لمت
وحضري أسطوانة وحتى صينية
ودي اللي حشت ها واخر واحده ايه انا عملت ودي اللي تقول زغ 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 ودي اللي تقول زغ 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 زغ
يطيب من تحت ومن فوق.
Because of women's intelligence, women have created a stake in patriarchy and have tried to play by the rules and get the most out of it. You're not going to upturn the culture, what people write in newspapers, or how the country is ruled. You're not going to change that anyway. I'm talking about making the most out of scarce resources in a culture of poverty that is devalued and doesn't have a voice.
The rulers had to destroy women's freedom to get the birth rate up. They needed men's support to do that. But most men love their mothers and their wives and their daughters. Why would they collaborate in hurting them? Besides, a fully militarized patriarchy was not good news for the average male. For every general, there are thousands of foot soldiers, and being a foot soldier is not good for your health. A few men ended up on top, but most men were less free, less rich, and maybe even less safe than before. So why did men go along with the patriarchal revolution? I suspect that in most places there was an unspoken deal made right at the dawn of civilization. The patriarchs had to buy men's support, and what they had to offer was status. Here was a way to reverse the huge loss of status men had suffered back when we all moved into the villages. Any competent tyrant would spot the raw material for a deal here. So here's an offer you can't refuse. Throw your lot in with us, back patriarchy, and we'll make you superior to all women. You'll have to obey us. But from now on, you'll have control over your women, and you can be certain, well, pretty certain, that they're your kids. What's more, your kids will belong to you, not your wife, and your property will go to your sons, not your sister's kids. Oh, and we'll change the religion, too. From now on, God will be male, and so will all his priests, and they'll all back your new male privileges. Around 2,000 years ago, new religions swept away the old pagan beliefs in almost all the mass civilizations of the old world. The new religions of the Middle East turned the universe into a perfect hierarchy with a single male sky god at the top. And the goddesses, who always played a major role in earlier religions, were demoted to mere saints, or at best, the mother of the god. Early Judaism, early Christianity, and Islam all segregated worshippers by sex. Their rules for women were patriarchy's rules. those who interpret God's will, of course, are exclusively male.
In Islam, God becomes much more abstract as an idea, as a concept. Linguistically speaking, he's referred to as a male god. However, it's really a very abstract concept of divinity, and definitely there's no tolerance of any female divinity there.
In their structure and rules, Christianity and Islam represent the final triumph of patriarchy. Yet the new religions were a paradox, for at the same time they were actually a revolt against inequality, the very core of patriarchy. They proclaimed that all human beings were basically equal, and that's probably why they spread so fast. However little the new religions changed things in practice, they were a sign that people would break with patriarchy if they had the chance. Maybe now we have. The veil has made a comeback in Egypt recently, and fundamentalism is on the rise. But looks can be deceiving.
Even though there is no law that says women should wear the veil in Egypt, we see it all over the Muslim world. You know, why are women wearing the veil, and why are they willingly wearing the veil? We know that some are pressured to wear it. And I think that it's the panicking, the insecurity of patriarchy, and its need to say to women, you should be more controlled.
Patriarchy is right to panic because these young women behave in ways unimaginable to their grandmothers. When they put on the veil, it's not in submission to some 4,000-year-old law. Often it's just a tactic to move outside the house.
ما لبست الحجاب يعني في ناس كتير قوي احترمتني بالحجاب ده على الاقل يعني كان زمان كان في ناس كتير بتبص لي لما ابقى ماشيه المعاكسات وكده فطبعا انا اللي كنت باخد ذنبهم لان انا اللي عامله في نفسي كده. فدلوقتي طبعا بعد ما لبست الزي الاسلامي ما لمش نفسي لو حد عكسني، انا كده عملت اللي عليا. وفي نفس الوقت برضك عدد المعاكسين قل كتير قوي قوي قوي، لان الواحد طبعا احترم نفسه في لبسه، فاكيد الناس هيحترموه.
The modern economy pulls women into the workforce, and education gives them new ideas. Such rapid change has provoked a fundamentalist backlash. It's the same struggle that started centuries ago in the West, and it isn't over there yet either.
If you put it in perspective, we can say that the new right has become a universal phenomenon. It takes the manifestation of women veiling in this culture. It takes other forms in other cultures. There are fascist movements in other cultures that demand certain forms of behavior. I'm sure there are similarities. I think the world economy is going through a crisis, and people always turn to religion or conservatism, to what they know.
All across the globe, a communications revolution is undermining the old ways.